All right, here's what I wanted you to learn last week when you were finishing up federalism. Okay, federalism, as you remember, is just the division of powers between the local governments, state governments, and the national government. Okay, now one of the things, though, if a lot of you put this in your review last week. One of the questions you had is, well, what happens if the state says we're not going to follow the federal government, or they pass a law that's different from what the federal government wants, or vice versa? Well, there's something called the Supremacy Clause in the Federal Constitution. It's in Article 6, Section 2. It basically says that federal Constitution is supreme. If there's ever conflict between a lower law, in this case a state or local law, and a higher one, the federal United States Constitution law, the higher one wins, as long as it's a valid exercise of federal power. So the U.S. Constitution basically is the supreme law of the land. Okay? Now, there's discrepancies here. A state can't declare war. If a state decides, they're going to declare war, then that's going to be taken to court. That's illegal under the Constitution because it says that the federal government is the only government that can declare war in the United States. So that would state declaration war would violate the Supremacy Clause. Okay. However, the opposite works as well. There's something called the Reserve Clause, which says that anything not listed in the Constitution specifically is given to the states, which is why a state issues you your driver's license. If the federal government decides, hey, we're going to start issuing driver's licenses for the entire nation. Instead of an Ohio driver's license, you'll have a United States driver's license. They can't do that. That violates the Reserve Powers Clause. And if a state sued the federal government, if they threw out the Supremacy Clause as a defense, they're going to lose because that's not a valid exercise of stated constitutional powers. Okay, now, this was defined in a case called McCulloch versus Maryland. This is a case that was decided over a bank and taxing, okay, and over federalism, the coexistence of federal, state, and local powers. It involved the Second Bank of the United States. Okay, the Bank of the United States was a bank that was created so the federal government could collect its taxes and make deposits and so forth. And it opened it up to the people as well. So not only was it the Bank of the United States, but you could go in there and open up a checking account or get a loan or something like that, okay? So these banks operated in various states in the United States. Now, they were a big national bank, and it was hard for all the local banks to compete with them. I mean, think about today, if you've got, a town that has a bunch of small businesses, if Walmart comes in or Target comes in and sets up shop, those stores are probably going to go out of business. So Maryland didn't want that to happen. So what they did was they tried to impede the operation, stop the operation of the Bank of the United States. They did that by imposing a tax on any notes of banks, basically deposits and withdrawals and loans of any bank not chartered in Maryland. The only bank that operated in Maryland that wasn't chartered in Maryland was the Bank of the United States. So this basically, they didn't specifically say it in the law, we're taxing the Bank of the United States. That's really what happened. Okay? Now, the Bank of the United States was the only out-of-state bank in Maryland. So the issue is, can the Constitution, first of all, can the federal government create a Bank of the United States? And then the other question is, can Maryland tax that bank, tax it out of existence? Okay, and the verdict was the Supreme Court of the United States, majority, said that the Necessary and Proper Clause of the Constitution said that Congress could charter a bank. There's nothing about chartering a bank in the Constitution, but there is specifically that the government can collect revenue and taxes and so forth. So the Necessary and Proper Clause, the necessary and proper power that would be used to carry that out would be, well, it needs to create a bank to collect the taxes and to collect the fees and so forth. Okay? Under their interstate commerce power and the right to regulate and coin money. Okay, the second question is, can then Maryland tax this Bank of the United States? And the Chief Justice at the time, John Marshall's famous quote is, "The power to tax is the power to destroy." So why are they taxing the bank? Well, they're putting it out of business, is what he said. Maryland's trying to put the bank out of business. Because what a bank would do is, if they have to pay extra fees to the government, they pass that on to their customers. So the price of doing business in the Bank of the United States is going to be more expensive because they're going to make the depositors pay that tax to the federal government indirectly. So it'll be cheaper to do a bank, to go to a bank to do business with a bank that's chartered in Maryland. So that's basically going to put the Bank of the United States out of business because it's going to be too expensive to do business there. Okay, so that violated then the Supremacy Clause, Article 6 of the Constitution that we were talking about before. So whenever there's a valid exercise of federal power, which Marshall said making this bank was a valid exercise of federal power, a state cannot infringe upon that power. Maryland's trying to tax them. Therefore, the bank is legal and the tax is illegal. Okay? All right. Now, a few other things. Today, the distribution of power between the states and the federal government is influenced by money. Who has more money? Well, the federal government has a lot more money than state governments and local governments. Okay? So, what the federal government likes to do these days, it's the state and the federal government cooperate together. It's called cooperative federalism. A lot of times what the federal government does now is provide money for programs. It'll tell the states, here's $1 million, spend it on education. Here's $2 million, spend it on improving your roads. Okay? So there's different types of grants here. A grant is when you give somebody money, they don't have to pay it back. Okay? There's federal revenue sharing. Okay? When the states get to share, the federal government shares its tax money with the states. It just gives it money. Okay? Here's $1 billion. It has done this recently in an act that during COVID, when a lot of people were not working and states were not collecting employment taxes, that they needed money just to survive. So the federal government provided that money to them. There's also mandates. Okay, a mandate is when you're required to do something. Okay, there's funded mandates and unfunded mandates. The federal government's gone away from unfunded mandates. If they tell every state, hey, we have to have a national speed limit of 60. Okay, well, that would cause states to have to buy new speed limit signs. That's an unfunded mandate. However, if the federal government said everybody's speed limit is going to be 60 on the highways and here's some signs to go along with it, that's a funded mandate. But a mandate is a requirement to do something. There's categorical grants. Okay, those are spent for a narrow, defined purpose. Okay, so the federal government might give a state money for a specific bridge to be repaired. Okay, I'm trying to do this a lot with the I-75 bridge that goes over the Ohio River. I've heard for years that needs to be repaired. Okay, but it's too expensive for the local and the state government to do that. So they're trying to get money from the federal government specifically to repair that bridge. Okay, that's a categorical grant, only for a narrowly defined purpose. Okay, a block grant is, here's the money, you can spend it on this item. It might be Homeland Security. It might be education. Okay, it might be improving your roads. In those cases, the states have a lot of leeway onto, what they actually, they have to specifically spend it on roads, but they determine which roads they're going to repair. Okay, so that's a block grant. Okay, all right, that's what I wanted you to learn last week. So make sure that you go through the review guide. Tell me what you know and what you still need some information on.